You know what you're listening to?
Is that a trick question?
It's the I Still Love This Game podcast with your host, Matthew Damian.
He's an idiot. Don't listen to this. He's an idiot.
But we will definitely not shut up and dribble. I would definitely not do that. I mean too much to society. I mean too much to the youth. I mean too much to the to so many kids that feel like they don't have a way out, and they need someone to help lead them out of the situation they're in.
My goodness. My goodness. If you guys didn't pick up on it, that was LeBron James. And that was a clip from LeBron James and his response to the shut up and dribble comments that Laura Ingraham, the Fox News reporter, made towards him. And isn't it funny how the actions will always supersede the words? So we've got a situation here that, you know, I obviously I took a sabbatical. I told you guys I was taking a sabbatical over the off season. I didn't want to talk basketball, anything like that. I just wanted to get away from it. And I did that, and I'm back a little bit early. Although preseason basketball is in effect, no one's really paying attention to it. Well, I mean, no one pays attention to the regular season either. But I've been keeping an eye on the Daryl Morey, Houston Rockets, China, Hong Kong situation, because it's just been one of those things where you just want to sit back and see how it unfolds and see if people actually stand true to their words and their convictions. So I had so many thoughts leading into this, and then I remembered the shut up and dribble thing. So I thought I got to put that in. And then when I heard that play through, you know, I've got a million thoughts running through my head now, and it's been a while since I podcast, so I'll apologize in advance if it's a little bit sloppy. But isn't it incredible? Isn't it incredible how, you know, the false bravado that we saw with the Colin Kaepernick situation, with the hands up, don't shoot, and I can't breathe, and Black Lives Matter, and all that stuff. It's A-okay to be, you know, anti-Donald Trump. It's A-okay to be anti-Second Amendment. It's completely fine to do all that. But then when you've got a situation unfold like what you saw in over the last couple of weeks, the last fortnight, that developed in China with a tweet. Now let's put this into some context, right? It wasn't done in China. China has no jurisdiction over the United States. It was a tweet by a US citizen on a US platform in regards to something that was happening in Hong Kong. And the reaction has been explosive. And I don't think the NBA can recover from this. I don't want to be an alarmist or anything like that, but the NBA kind of hitched its wagon to the Twitter audience. They hitched its wagon to the outrage mob. And now that outrage mob has a lot more conviction in what they're saying, a lot more legitimacy in what they're saying, because a lot of them are saying, hold on a second, you completely contradicted yourself by everything you said. You remember, you know, LeBron James calling Donald Trump a bum, and Steph Curry and those guys refusing to go to the White House. And the reason was they were standing by their alleged or supposed convictions. They couldn't stand the man, everything he stood for, all that. However, what we saw here with this tweet, which was a pro-democracy tweet from Daryl Morey in support of those people in Hong Kong, and the Chinese government, which is a totalitarian government, it's a dictatorship. And I'll get into all that stuff in a minute, and, you know, the political science in me is going to come out, unfortunately. But I will get into it so you'll understand the context behind it. But what you saw with the NBA players essentially shutting up and dribbling, caving, taking the you know, to use a Game of Thrones reference, taking the knee to China is alarming. Now, I've said for a long time that the NBA is not in the financial shape that they have claimed to be. The proof is in the pudding. You just have to look at the attendance. You have to look at the TV ratings. You have to look at the fact that they need to put advertising on jerseys to supplement their huge salaries. All those things told me that's a league in trouble. The WNBA lockout was alarming as well. That shows you that the league is not rolling hand over fist in cash like it pretends that it is. And they've made a conscious decision to cater to the casual fan. Now, what they've done now is completely turned off the casual fan even more. So they've already turned on the hardcore fan by the product. Players not wanting to play, sitting out games. When they play, they don't play hard. The whole load management nonsense. All that stuff. And then the nerfing of the rules. So defensive players can't actually play defense in order to, boost up scoring, because that's apparently what fans want. Now, we want competition. We want to see competition. And you combine those factors, the hardcore fan has started to walk away from it. And they've walked away in droves. Look at how popular the NBA was in the 80s and 90s. It was actually challenging the NBA. It was bigger than Major League Baseball in terms of numbers. And then you saw a steady decline since then, to the point that it's hit rock bottom now. This is a league that you've got to be very concerned with, because so much money is guaranteed. And if they don't get big TV deals coming up, which they may not because the ratings are so horrific, how are they going to continue to give players pay rises, which they believe they so thoroughly deserve? So you look at all of that from a hardcore fan standpoint, and that's really where the money is. They went away from that for the casual fan, the Twitter fan, the Facebook, the Instagram fan, right? And now the Facebook and Instagram fan, they're going to turn on them, and they already have started to turn on them, for their stance and their hypocrisy. And good for them for actually having some conviction, even though I don't necessarily always agree with them. I mean, I try to stay away from those platforms because I hate social media. But the reality is, where's the NBA going to turn to now? And the submission to China is so damning, and I've been saying this for a long time, that the NBA is not rolling in money, and I didn't realize how badly they were dependent on Chinese dollars. But the frustration in this is, I don't care what your political stance is. I never have. Like, I'll listen to it, but I'm not going to take offense to it. What I do take offense to is being lied to. And this whole Kaepernick thing, the kneeling, the protests, all that stuff, even though that's the NFL, the NBA players were very boisterous, right? But you never saw them take a knee. And why is that? Because the NBA is all about business. And okay, if it's all about business, then fine. But don't tell me then that you're more than an athlete, or that you're a social activist, or any of this stuff. Because you're not. And that's the reality of it. If you are, you are. If you're not, you're not. It's just that simple. You can't cater to both worlds. You can't be a social activist, but then also want money. And the NBA, and a lot of its players, not all of them, but a lot of its players, they've created this situation now where they will, they will pull the All-Star Weekend from Charlotte because of a transgender law that an anti-transgender, not anti-transgender, but the whole bathroom bill. Look it up. I don't really want to talk about it too much. But what I would like to talk about is, people think, well, you don't understand China. Okay, that's a cop-out. Okay, because it takes 2 seconds to look it up on Wikipedia. And if you don't care about it, then also keep in mind that a lot of people don't care about, like, a transgender bathroom rule. And that's just, I hate to say that, but a lot of people do not care because it doesn't influence. No, you can't then get up and say, well, how dare you not say that, but if you don't also care about China. What's been going on in China is unbelievable. It's a dictatorship. There is no freedom of speech there. There's no freedom of press there. There's no freedom of movement there. There's no freedom of the internet there. All these things are censored. And I haven't even got into the real bad stuff, where, the one-child policy and the execution and the imprisonment and all those things. Just look this stuff up. Look at what they did to Tibet. Look at what they continue to do to Tibet. Look at what they do towards Taiwan. Their censorship. Their censorship is spreading. And it's spreading to the United States. Because now you're seeing instances where fans are at games holding up free Hong Kong signs or pro-democracy signs, and they're being taken away. Imagine for a minute, just imagine the outcry. When we saw the outcry with the shut up and dribble thing, but imagine the outcry if a fan had a Black Lives Matter t-shirt and they were told, no, that's a political statement, take it off, or surrender the shirt, or leave. Imagine that. Just imagine that for a second. This is the United States of America. What is the First Amendment? It's freedom of speech. and yet you're not allowed to practice religion in the in China. You're not allowed to do any of these things. And they have been condemned by the UN. They've been condemned by any freedom-loving country, democracy-loving country in the world. And yet now in the United States, specifically the NBA, you're not allowed to. It's not even necessarily a direct criticism of China. It's more of a support of Hong Kong and democracy. So you can't be pro-democracy because they'll view that as a criticism of their communist regime. So the problem here is huge for the NBA, because this is a mess that they have made, and they should have. Once again, it's easy to have this false bravado when there's absolutely no repercussions. If anything, there's only benefits. You look at how much money Nike, has made with their movements, whether it's Colin Kaepernick or the equality movement and all this stuff. But yet, and that's where the real danger in all of this has been exposed, is the NBA. It's not necessarily submitting just to China, but it's also submitting to Nike. It's also submitting to Under Armour. Because these big corporations, where is their... they don't always make all their products in Bangladesh or things like that, but they're huge markets, and a lot of workshops and things like that have been in China. So the problem now that the NBA is now... It's in a situation now that they've catered to the casual fan, and once they cater to the casual fan, now the casual fan expects them to be social activists and equality and all those things. But now the NBA is also a business, right? But it's also put itself, it's got one foot in one door and the other foot in the other door, and it can't cater to both of them. Because now the situation with China and these big globalist companies, they're saying, hold on a second, we have vested interest in China. And China is putting pressure on us, and we're going to put pressure on you. So the NBA essentially has submitted to China, but the damage has already been done. Because on one hand, they've had this, as I said, false bravado, very staunch, very, we're making a stand here. We're not just athletes. We're more than athletes. We've got all this vested interest, and they're so quick to arc up with anything that happens that they disagree with in the United States. But yet they're not doing it in China. So either they're cowards or they condone what happens in China because of the money involved in China. And neither is good. It could be a combination too, by the way. So that's an incredible situation that's unfolded. And I didn't think it would start basically off a tweet, but that sometimes the biggest exposures of manipulators and liars will be the smallest thing. The smallest thing will actually expose them. And I've been saying for a long time, this stuff is nonsense. This stuff is all fake. Because the actions never... and I brought up China before, I brought up Indonesia before, I brought up all that stuff before, especially, the equality movement. So if you really believe in equality, then don't have your stuff made in sweatshops where people are being paid slave labor over there. And, I copped a lot of criticism for this. This is not an I told you so episode, but this is very alarming, and I hope the people are paying attention now that I didn't do this just to make fun of the league or to run it down. I did it because the hypocrisy was staring me right in the face. And the unfortunate thing is, I think a lot of people are seeing it now and they don't know what to do because they're probably stunned. This is what their moment where they're like, maybe the NBA is wrong. Maybe LeBron James was full of it. And I've said for a long time that guy's a politician. He cannot be trusted. He lies too much. He knows how to manipulate the media, and it's just the same way a career politician knows how to. And all the ones like the Steph Currys of the world, the James Hardens, all those guys, they've followed in that footstep now. They're very political, and the problem is they're not equipped for it. And I feel sorry for some of these guys, like especially guys like James Harden, like the position he's been put in. Like you have to be built for this. You have to be a Muhammad Ali for this. And these guys are not Muhammad Ali. But you have to be able, and I didn't agree with everything Muhammad Ali said either. But I will say this about Muhammad Ali. He stood by his convictions. He went to jail for his stuff. These guys will not even voice criticism And I read the list before of what happens in China. These guys will not even stand up to a foreign power, a foreign country that has no jurisdiction over the United States and their citizens. All they had to do was turn around and go home. That's all they had to do. He said, you know what? I don't agree with it. Or they do agree with it. It's one or the other. It really is one or the other. And they've made their decision. And as I said before, this is dangerous territory for the NBA because of their relationship with shoe companies, their relationship with media, so like Apple and YouTube and Google and all those things, right? Their relationship with those places, and China puts heavy influence on those. And then, of course, they've been struggling big time in terms of sustaining audience and revenue from the US domestically. I mean, just look at the crowds. There's going to be big backlash. What is going to happen? You know, I mentioned the signs being confiscated. What happens if people start chanting "Free Hong Kong"? What happens there? What happens if, entire sections have T-shirts that spell out "Free Hong Kong" or "Pro-Democracy"? Not even "Free Hong Kong." What if they just have "Pro-Democracy"? Where does this really end? Well, you cannot say in the United States you cannot support democracy you're a US citizen on a US platform, a company that's run in the US, that is owned and operated in the United States. You cannot be pro-democracy. Are you telling me that's not alarming? And the players went along with it, and yet they want to talk about Donald Trump, and they want to talk about him being a bum, and they want to make a stand with that, or they want to make a stand with North Carolina, or they want to make a stand with things like that, or they'll voice their support for Colin Kaepernick, but they won't even get on a knee, because once again, that was a rule in the NBA, so they didn't even go against that. And you've got Steve Kerr, you've got Greg Popovich, it's not just the players, you've got those guys that are very quick, very, very quick to jump on that and show their quote-unquote support for those causes. But yet you've got a situation that's been happening for decades, centuries in China. And those people have been suffering for centuries. They have concentration camps there with millions of people. Granted, the country has 1.4 billion people, but still millions of people are in concentration camps over there. Not one word is said. But yet they want to make a stand because Donald Trump might tweet some silly things. Or he might be obnoxious. Or it's just incredible the differences in terms of the standards when you have repercussions versus, accountability. If you have no repercussions and accountability, how brave we all are. But yet put somebody's face in the fire and see exactly how they actually respond to that. Are they cowards? Do they stand by their convictions or do they not? Or do they look for the easy way out? And they have gone with the easy way out and they have shut up and dribbled. And I do not want to hear another word from them ever again from any political standpoint. Even if they retract their statements once they get back to the United States, or people, it's too late. It's too late. It's absolutely too late. Because they keep cowering, the cowardice is just unbelievable. And if it sounds like I'm annoyed, I am, because they lied through their teeth. And they misled a lot of people. Now, they didn't mislead me. And you might think, you might hear some of the, you see my responses in comments or, the videos or whatever. And you might think that I hate you guys for disagreeing. I do not. I'm angry because you guys have been misled. And that's very, very disturbing. And how badly they misled you guys. In terms of what they stood for, because they stood for absolutely nothing. All they stood for was attention. How could they gather attention? How they could garner attention? How could they exploit certain things like shut up and dribble, for example? Whatever it is. Kobe Bryant did the same thing, by the way. And they were quick to say all of that. They were quick to use that as illustrations of their victimhood. But yet when they were over there and they could make, if they had an ounce of conviction in what they were saying, what they were talking about, in wanting equality or whatever, when they actually came into a situation where they could have made a stand, they could have made China, put China in a situation where the Chinese government would be accountable for what they do. Far too long the Chinese have been going, for whatever reason, under the radar and they haven't been held accountable for their actions and their transgressions against human rights. The NBA had an opportunity to do that, and instead, now they're trying to silence people in the United States. They're trying to silence people that go to the games in the United States. They're trying to do all of that to appease the Chinese, and this will have major, major ramifications. The media will not talk about this. The media will not be honest in how big of a situation this actually is. Because the American public, they're not stupid. They will look at this, and it's hard to respect players after that. It's hard to, if you gave me, I'll tell you right now, if you gave me a ticket and you said you could go over to China right now and visit, I would not. I'd tear that ticket up right in front of you. And that's just the reality of it. I had some notes here. Once again, I had some notes. I didn't go off them at all. I just vented. I'm sorry if it was a bit sloppy, but the NBA, it showed its hand, and the NBA has shut up and dribble.